The television courtroom had never seen such open and shameless disrespect directed at a man who had sacrificed nearly everything for his country. Karen Daniels, a 48-year-old real estate agent known for her designer clothes, luxury car, and arrogant attitude, sat confidently inside Judge Judy's courtroom, believing she controlled the situation completely. Across from her was James Crawford, a 67-year-old retired Marine veteran whose rough, trembling hands held a folder filled with property papers and old photographs of his late wife. What unfolded over the next few minutes would explode across the internet, becoming one of the most unforgettable courtroom moments ever broadcast, viewed by millions and shared endlessly under hashtags demanding respect for veterans everywhere. But the shocking part wasn't simply that Karen lost her case. It wasn't even the humiliation she suffered on national television. What truly destroyed her was the fury Judge Judy unleashed after Karen mocked a decorated veteran to his face, a moment so brutal and unforgettable that it destroyed Karen's reputation overnight and turned her into one of the most despised people in America. Before we get to the exact moment that triggered Judge Judy's legendary takedown, make sure to hit the like button if you believe veterans deserve respect and that people who mock them should face real consequences. Subscribe so you never miss these unforgettable courtroom confrontations where arrogant bullies finally meet someone who refuses to tolerate their behavior. What you're about to witness is the kind of justice that reminds people karma always arrives eventually, and usually at the perfect moment. Now let's step inside the courtroom and see how everything spiraled out of control. James Crawford never imagined he would end up standing inside a courtroom. After serving 24 years in the United States Marine Corps, including combat tours in Vietnam and Desert Storm, he had already endured more hardship than most people could ever comprehend. He carried a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star with valor, proof of wounds suffered and courage shown under enemy fire. He had watched fellow Marines die overseas and returned home carrying memories that still haunted his sleep decades later. Through every difficult chapter of his life, his wife Mary had been there beside him. She steadied him during his darkest moments and celebrated every victory with him. When Mary lost her battle with cancer 8 months earlier, Jim felt completely broken. The only responsibility left was selling the home Mary had inherited from her parents, a modest suburban property worth around $380. To Jim, selling the house wasn't about profit. It was about closure. It was about honoring the memory of the woman he loved by handling her affairs with dignity and honesty, the same values that had shaped his entire military career. That was when Karen Daniels entered his life like a storm disguised in expensive perfume and fake professionalism. She promised top-tier service, boasted about her success as a real estate agent, and convinced Jim that she was the perfect person to sell the property quickly and efficiently. Jim, raised on military values where a handshake and a promise actually meant something, trusted her completely and signed a contract agreeing to a 6% commission, nearly $23,000 once the house sold. What he didn't realize was that Karen had built a career targeting vulnerable clients who were grieving, elderly, or too intimidated to fight back against aggressive legal threats and manipulative business tactics. Karen barely did any actual work after securing the contract. Over the next 3 months, she posted only 2 photos of the property online, skipped 4 open houses without proper explanations, and ignored countless calls and emails from Jim asking for updates. When he finally tracked her down by visiting her office in person, Karen treated him like a nuisance interrupting her day, barely glancing away from her phone while insisting expensive properties simply took longer to sell. But Jim had started asking questions. He spoke with other agents and slowly realized Karen's so-called premium service was little more than complete neglect. When he politely asked to cancel the agreement so he could hire someone who would genuinely market the property, Karen's professional mask disappeared instantly. She refused to release him from the contract and demanded the full commission anyway, along with another $8,000 in supposed marketing expenses, despite doing almost no marketing at all. Soon afterward, Jim received a threatening letter from Karen's attorney filled with intimidating legal language warning him about lawsuits, damaged credit, and financial consequences. For a retired veteran living on a fixed pension, the demand for nearly $30,000 was devastating, but what hurt even more was the betrayal itself. Jim had spent his entire life believing integrity mattered. Karen represented the exact opposite, someone who used power and intimidation against people too vulnerable to defend themselves. Karen Daniels had perfected this behavior over the years. She specifically targeted older clients dealing with emotional stress, financial hardship, or grief because she knew they were less likely to challenge her authority. She carefully documented which clients were easiest to pressure and which ones would probably avoid legal conflict altogether. Although several complaints had previously been filed against her with the real estate board, expensive lawyers had helped her avoid serious consequences every single time. That history made Karen dangerously confident as she prepared to appear on Judge Judy. She spent weeks gathering legal printouts from websites, rehearsing smug explanations in front of her mirror, and choosing the perfect outfit to project wealth and authority on television. She bragged to colleagues that she would embarrass Judge Judy on national TV and expose Jim Crawford as just another difficult client trying to escape contractual obligations. What Karen had no idea about was the fact that Judge Judy had already noticed multiple inconsistencies and lies in her paperwork before the hearing even began. And by the time Karen walked into that courtroom, Judge Judy was already prepared to make an example out of her. The courtroom carried its usual tense atmosphere as cameras rolled and audience members waited for another dramatic case to begin. Judge Judy reviewed her notes carefully while production staff completed final preparations. Nobody present realized they were about to witness a moment that would define courtroom television history. Jim entered first, dressed in a simple gray suit with a small American flag pin attached to his jacket. Even at 67 years old, his military discipline was obvious in the way he carried himself. Upright posture, calm expression, controlled movements. He held his documents tightly, visibly nervous, but determined to remain composed. Karen arrived moments later with the confidence of someone entering a fashion show rather than a courtroom. Her designer suit fit perfectly, and her expensive briefcase swung casually from her arm as she ignored Jim completely while taking her seat. Judge Judy began the proceedings in her usual direct style, outlining the dispute and explaining that Jim claimed Karen had failed to properly market the property while still demanding enormous fees. Jim spoke quietly and respectfully, his voice cracking with emotion as he explained that the home belonged to his late wife and that he simply wanted to handle her memory honorably. He carefully described Karen's negligence, listing missed appointments, ignored calls, and broken promises. When he mentioned his military service, he didn't do it seeking sympathy. He only explained that the Marines taught him integrity and trust mattered deeply. In the Marines, your word means everything, he said softly while organizing his papers. I trusted her to honor that. Karen reacted immediately with obvious contempt. She rolled her eyes repeatedly while Jim spoke and smirked whenever his voice shook while discussing his wife's death. She sighed loudly into the microphone and acted as though the entire hearing was beneath her. Judge Judy noticed every gesture. Her expression slowly hardened into the unmistakable look viewers recognized as the warning sign before one of her devastating confrontations. When Karen finally received permission to present her side, she interrupted before Judge Judy even finished speaking. Karen dismissed the case as nothing more than buyer's remorse and began lecturing Judge Judy about contract law and real estate policies like she was teaching a classroom. She waved around internet printouts and spoke with condescending arrogance, acting as though nobody else in the courtroom understood business. Then she crossed a line that immediately changed the atmosphere. Referring to Jim's grief over losing his wife, Karen mocked what she called his sob story and insisted emotions had no relevance in a business dispute. Several people in the audience audibly gasped. Judge Judy immediately warned Karen not to interrupt or disrespect the plaintiff, but Karen muttered under her breath and continued acting irritated like a spoiled child, forced to follow rules she considered unnecessary. As Judge Judy questioned Karen about her actual marketing efforts, Karen stumbled through weak excuses about timing and market conditions. Then Jim quietly spoke again, explaining that he only wanted honest service and mentioning that the Marines taught him promises should be honored. That was the exact moment everything exploded. Karen suddenly laughed out loud. The sound echoed through the courtroom so sharply it felt almost unreal. Then she mocked him openly. "Oh, please," she sneered while making air quotes with her fingers. "The soldier card. Everybody pulls that out when they're losing an argument." She even smirked toward the cameras as if she expected viewers to agree with her. The room instantly fell silent. Jim's face showed a mixture of shock, pain, and restrained anger held back only by decades of military discipline. Audience members stared in disbelief, while even the court officer instinctively stepped forward slightly. But the most dramatic change happened at the judge's bench. Judge Judy's face turned cold and rigid. Her voice became terrifyingly calm as she leaned forward and asked Karen if she wanted to repeat what she had just said for the record. Completely unaware of how badly she had miscalculated, Karen doubled down. She insisted veterans often used military service to gain sympathy and claimed it was manipulative. Judge Judy stared at her with pure disbelief before slowly asking, "You call 24 years in the Marines a card? Vietnam. Desert Storm, a Purple Heart, a Bronze Star with Valor. That's a card to you." Karen's confidence finally started cracking. But she still tried defending herself by saying military service shouldn't matter in a contract dispute. Then Judge Judy asked a question that completely shattered Karen's composure. "What exactly have you sacrificed for this country, Miss Daniels?" Karen responded weakly by saying she paid taxes. The audience actually laughed at the absurd comparison. From that point forward, Judge Judy completely dismantled Karen's case piece by piece. She mocked Karen's demand for nearly $23,000 after doing nothing except posting 2 Facebook photos. She exposed every missed open house and every ignored call. Every excuse Karen attempted to make was immediately shut down. Then Judge Judy made the confrontation deeply personal. She began talking about her own father, a World War II veteran haunted by combat memories for decades after returning home. She explained that her father never demanded praise or sympathy, but deserved basic respect for what he endured. Then she looked directly at Karen and compared Jim Crawford to her father. She reminded Karen that Jim had sacrificed years of his life, his peace of mind, and his physical safety so people like her could enjoy freedom without ever understanding the cost behind it. The courtroom remained completely silent while Karen visibly shrank in her chair, her makeup beginning to streak as panic finally overtook her arrogance. Judge Judy stood up from her chair, something she rarely ever did during proceedings, and the entire courtroom understood the significance instantly. Her voice rose with righteous fury as she delivered her ruling. Karen would receive absolutely no commission whatsoever. Instead, she was ordered to pay Jim $10 in damages, half for breach of contract and half for emotional distress caused by exploiting a grieving widower and mocking his military service. Karen immediately protested, claiming the decision wasn't fair and complaining about her business expenses. That was when Judge Judy unleashed the speech that would become one of the most replayed moments in television history. She reminded Karen that Jim spent 24 years risking his life so people like her could enjoy comfortable lives and successful careers. She described the sacrifices veterans make, bleeding overseas, burying friends, living with lifelong trauma, while people back home worried about luxury purchases and commission checks. Judge Judy called Karen a predator who targeted vulnerable people for profit and accused her of exploiting grief and trust for personal gain. She explained that contracts require both parties to act in good faith, something Karen had clearly failed to do. Finally, Judge Judy slammed her gavel down and ordered Karen out of the courtroom. Before Karen left, Judge Judy sarcastically thanked her for her service, a final cutting remark that drew shocked reactions from the audience. Karen stumbled out in tears, dropping papers everywhere while cameras captured every humiliating second of her collapse. After Karen fled the courtroom, Jim slowly stood up and gave Judge Judy a crisp military salute. For a moment, the room became silent again. Then Judge Judy did something nobody expected. She returned the salute. The audience immediately rose into a standing ovation, while even court staff appeared emotional witnessing the exchange. That image, a judge saluting a veteran after defending his dignity, instantly spread across social media and became symbolic of respect, justice, and accountability. Within hours, the clip exploded online. Millions shared the video while veterans and military families praised Judge Judy for standing up against disrespect. The hashtag supporting veterans trended for days as reaction videos, discussions, and emotional responses flooded every major platform. Karen's life collapsed almost immediately afterward. Her real estate license was suspended pending investigation, and authorities uncovered numerous complaints from elderly clients accusing her of similar predatory behavior. Her brokerage fired her publicly. Thousands of negative reviews flooded her business pages before she deleted them. Former clients who had previously stayed silent finally stepped forward. Even her personal relationships reportedly fell apart after the viral scandal exposed her behavior nationwide. Jim Crawford's life changed in the opposite direction. The property eventually sold above asking price to a patriotic buyer who wanted to support a veteran. Viewers raised substantial donations for Jim, much of which he gave to charities supporting veterans suffering from PTSD and homelessness. He became widely respected for the dignity and restraint he showed during the confrontation and was invited to veterans' events across the country. The courtroom moment evolved into more than viral entertainment. It became a lesson about ethics, respect, and accountability. Real estate organizations used the case as an example of unacceptable conduct. Veterans groups shared the clip to raise awareness about the treatment of service members. Some lawmakers even proposed stronger protections for elderly and veteran clients after the case gained national attention. Judge Judy's emotional defense of Jim Crawford became one of the defining moments of her career, proof that sometimes anger is justified when basic human decency has been completely abandoned. If this story moved you and reminded you why veterans deserve respect, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more unforgettable courtroom moments, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts about people who exploit or disrespect those who served. Never forget that freedom has a price, and men like Jim Crawford paid it willingly. The very least society can offer in return is dignity, gratitude, and respect.